Welcome to Nell and Matt's Obsolete Movies, the podcast where we revisit movies from our 20-plus years of collecting films on obsolete formats. You can also think of this podcast as being about films from the VHS era that we don't necessarily watch them on VHS, but we do watch them on some sort of device for some sort of medium that they don't make anymore. So...
Exactly.
Yes, and so our film for this episode is The Sentinel from 1977, and we watched it on VHS, getting it from we don't remember where it came from. This was a recent purchase, though. We did make this purchase for the podcast.
Yeah. Yes, we did, because I actually like this film and have liked it for years.
Yeah, and we own it on DVD already. But
and,
they still make DVDs, so it's not Nell and Matt's Obsolete Movies and DVDs.
So I decided we needed the VHS version of it so that we could add it to our podcast.
Yes.
So I was disappointed there was no previews.
There is no previews, so that's part of the things about getting into this film. This was a Good Times home video release, which, if you even look at the reels, this is on a slower speed. This is not a high-fidelity cassette. Good Times, for those of you who are into VHS culture, there are certain labels, certain imprints, certain distributors that, they just kind of put a movie on a tape. And in fact, one of the things I noticed with this tape, it was just a tape of a certain length that happened to have the Sentinel on it.
Yes.
And so our VCR auto-rewinds and probably played for another half an hour.
Yeah.
It was a 90-minute movie. They had a 2-hour tape. They recorded the Sentinel on it, slapped a label on it, threw it in a box, and somehow it got to our house.
Yeah.
And
which was like the Wild West of like VHS at the time, right? Because you had
there
all
were
these
few of those few of those imprints that just kind of. Our copy of Diabolique that I got at the Dollar General in Crescent, Pennsylvania, 1990 something, has the slowest speed tape on it. The fidelity was quite bad. This was not spectacular.
Yeah. Some
auto tracking had to work overtime for us to watch this movie.
The bottom kept fuzzing out.
Yeah, it's one of them. But yeah, we don't remember where we got it. We have it. We bought it for the podcast probably in the last 2 years, and we watched it today.
Because it's Easter, we thought good versus evil would be like a good Easter theme.
It's a very Catholic movie. Catholic-themed movie.
It's very Catholic. Like, it's such a Catholic movie. It's like a Catholic movie with a capital C. I don't think the church uses it. The Catholic Church
No, definitely not. But there are these themes. I mean, the church has a role.
Yes.
And the church has this role of, basically finding the person that is to, plot, spoiler, guard the gates of hell.
Yes.
I guess people haven't seen this movie. We should explain. It's a young model and her lawyer boyfriend. They're just not ready to live together yet, and so they're shopping for real estate in New York City, which even then, there was an apartment. The apartment she got in Brooklyn Heights, which the building still exists, and I looked it up. She was spending $600 a month. It was the list price, and they gave it to her for $5.
Actually, I think
$400 a month to live in a very beautiful old 1880s brownstone right across the river from Manhattan. Mind-shattering amount of money. Now, I know a unit in that building in the last 2 years went for $1.2 million. So that's crazy. New York, bad old days in New York, but the cheap old days of New York. So they're looking for an apartment. She gets this apartment in Brooklyn Heights, and it just happens to be where the person who guards the gateway to hell lives, and then she's kind of in line for being the next Sentinel, basically. That's the plot. Yeah. There's weird neighbors. There's a tough New York City detective who doesn't trust the lawyer, who is a little shady.
Yeah.
There is a bunch of early career cameos in this film of actors who would be more important later in the VHS era. So again, this film's 1977, and in one of the first scenes you meet Jeff Goldblum.
Yep.
Early career role for Jeff Goldblum. 2/3 of the way through the film, Christopher Walken shows up as the not lead detective, but the other guy who's hanging around chewing up the scenery. I think he has like 3 lines in the movie.
Yeah, maybe 3 lines.
And in the last scene in the film, Tom Berenger shows up, who has, I think, 2 lines in this movie. Just kind of squeezing in there, who in the 80s and 90s and even in the aughts were sort of important people.
And if you're a fan of Law and Order, I think he was on, but he was Lumiere from Beauty and the Beast, Jerry Orbach.
Yes.
Very brief as the film director. He has pissy lines. He's angry at her, but he has some lines. And then if you're a fan of Fright Night or Princess Bride, Chris Sarandon plays the lawyer boyfriend, though he's probably most famous for being married to Susan Sarandon, and that's early in their lives together.
And I just realized, like Jeff Goldblum with us today doing those commercials for Apartments.com, that's how I found out about what the unit went for in that building. Was on Apartments.com, which kind of closes the loop. But anyway, back to the Catholicism of this film, since I guess this is technically our Easter special. Yeah, so you have this idea that there is heaven, but you have to sacrifice to get there.
Yeah.
There is a system and a procedure. There is a hierarchy of things. Again, sometimes people have to make sacrifices for that or have a duty. That's very Catholic in a way.
We find out that Allison, who comes from a very wealthy family, that when she was a teenager, she got home early from school, walked in on her father having
an orgy,
and she attempts suicide. And then she attempts suicide again when Michael, her boyfriend's wife, commits suicide. And so there's also the sense of that because she's committed suicide, she can't go into heaven unless she does a sacrifice, right? A greater sacrifice because she attempted suicide twice. Yes. And if you're a fan of Constantine, the film, the same thing with or the book or the graphic novel, John Constantine, same thing. He attempted suicide and it has been trying to make amends for that.
Yes.
And so this is now her opportunity to make amends for that.
And also, part of it, I think, being a 1977 film, we have to talk about how this film was maybe towards the end of a series of films about God, godliness, our fallen world, is God dead, what's the meaning of evil?
Yeah.
Starting with Rosemary's Baby, continuing with The Exorcist,
Omen,
continuing with The Omen. And then there's this other movie.
I was joking with Matt. There was Jaws, Piranha, then Orca. This is the Orca of
that series of films. Because it was the church, it was the devil alive and well and influencing human behavior in our world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, it should be mentioned this was a adaptation of a best-selling novel.
Yeah, the novel was huge. It sold. So the author of the novel actually had pitched it as a script that he was trying to get it made. He wanted it to be a movie. No one was interested. He wrote the book, and he ended up selling 7 million books. Hugely popular. And at that time, actually even now, if a friend of ours called up and said they got a $200,000, what's it called when you're writing a book and they give you money?
Advance,
a $200,000 advance. You'd be like, what? Got a $200,000 advance for the book. So it did really well with the book, but the movie did not do well.
And I think that's part of where we have to talk about watching this movie in 2020. Well, you liked The Sentinel.
Yes, I do like The Sentinel.
I found myself sort of mystified why the film didn't work, and I needed a couple hours to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things being, so the author of the book had his hand in the screenplay.
Yeah.
And I'm an English professor saying this. They always say the book is better than the movie, but not really.
Yeah.
Notable exceptions: Fight Club.
Yes.
by Chuck Palahniuk.
Yeah.
And
Fight
Rita
Club.
Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption by Stephen King are
Yeah.
two great examples where the film is better because the clunkiness or the meandering nature of a plot that you can get away with in a novel and a novella is streamlined tremendously.
Yeah.
And captures the emotionally correct best parts of
Yes.
the script and the meaning,
Right.
while just streamlining. Like, for instance, for example, in Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, there are, I think, 3, 4, maybe 5 wardens
That
Andy Dufresne works through or
Yeah.
lives under. The warden in the film is the amalgamation of the most interesting parts of the personalities of those 3 to 5 wardens.
Right.
I read his book 25 years ago. So of those 3 to 5
Yeah.
wardens, it's just streamlined so much better.
Yeah.
One of the things that for me goes wrong with this film is the through line or the plot or all of the elements that are leading you to a sense of dramatic irony where, this better get fixed before
Yeah.
the lawyer discovers this whole portal to hell thing in the last 20 minutes,
Right.
20, 30 minutes of the film. And then you're like, that's what all of this means. He better try to stop that.
Right.
Whereas you just have vaguely weird stuff happening for an hour.
Yeah, no, I think
So that's strike one for me for the Sentinel.
And to kind of add to that, there is this moment where he says to her, he gives her like a line from the Bible or something, and she's like, what are you talking about? And he said, this is Gabriel saying to Uriel a warning about, the gates of hell. And since then, there's always been sentinels who are in charge of guarding the gate, and you're the next sentinel. And there's no, this, just throwaway, everyone knows there's this concept of the sentinel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not even a biblical thing. You're like, there's no biblical, where in the Bible does it talk about a sentinel?
There's like a Milton reference.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, which again, I think in a novel you can establish that.
Yeah.
And the form of a novel in terms of storytelling, you can establish that. Strike two for the film for me is it's a horror movie plot. It's a horror movie premise. It's a horror movie premise, at least.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a plot.
Yeah.
It's a premise. And there are some amazing practical makeup effects that you see with the people who are either from hell or coming out of hell. Especially in the last scene, nothing else in the film looks like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Nothing else sounds like a horror movie. It's more of the most of the film looks, and in terms of the music, sounds like one of those movies, like 70s grown-up people with grown-up problems drama films.
Yeah.
It just happens to be there's a gateway to hell that opens up, that might open up at the end of the film.
And I hate when that happens.
It's not a good time.
It's not a good time.
And you're just looking for a cheap place to live in New York City that's safe, that's got amenities, that's an easy commute.
Yeah.
And you just happen to, go into that place.
And so actually at the core of it, going back to the reference of it being an adult's drama. Her boyfriend, the lawyer Michael, has his wife killed and made it look like a suicide so he can be with her. And they were having an affair.
Yes.
And he did this to be with her. And so that is actually kind of like a dark tone to it for him to do this. But also they don't really establish that. So Michael, for him to get to the point where he would arrange for his wife to be killed, you would think that as she's pulling away to get her own place and to try to live on her own, that his possessiveness would increase because
he literally murdered
his
for
wife.
her.
But it's not there. It's really weird. So there's this weirdness to the tone of it where They just seem like your typical, like, happy-go-lucky couple. Like, you would have no idea until the police officer mentions this, that he doesn't like him because of this. That this is why, he's a bad dude. But you have no sense that he is a bad dude. And there's no, like, hints along the way that, oh, wow, he's dangerous, right? And he obviously is a dangerous man if he's willing to have his wife killed with it. Now, he also is the one who finds out the plot and is trying to save her from this initially.
Yeah.
So it's obviously does love her, but it is kind of weird how he got to be with her.
Yeah. Also, do those two characters have any on-screen chemistry at all?
No.
Could you imagine those people having sex?
No.
There's one scene where they're flirty on the couch and cute.
Yeah.
During a really boring party, and that is it. Yeah. That is the love between them.
And there is also no indication of why she would be the next in line as the Sentinel.
Yes.
So you find out that she has attempted suicide twice, which honestly, if you didn't grow up Catholic and being told that you're going to go to hell if you commit suicide, like how, like a contemporary audience today, would you make that connection like, oh, you're going to burn in hell because you attempted suicide? Like you need to do something to save your soul from that torment.
Yeah.
But there's nothing beyond that. You say that she wore a cross as a child.
Yes.
To indicate that she would be the next.
And there's the little bit of finding dad mid orgy. I guess is a crisis of faith or something until the dad dies. She starts wearing the cross again.
Yeah.
Again, I think all of those things within the confines of a novel, and that is a storytelling form you can establish so much better.
Yeah.
So you either have to rewrite how it's shown in a film or drop it.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a lot in this film that's that's somewhere in the middle, and that they didn't necessarily grasp what a horror movie could be. Because the other example I think of in terms of ominous, you think of like The Omen and The Exorcism, the soundtracks.
Yes.
So iconic, so ominous. We're 2 years before Halloween. So there's not the John Carpenter super cheap synth score that established. So they didn't know how to do that then, but then they also didn't have tubular bells.
Yeah.
Or, the scene in The Exorcist, the iconic scene that is on the movie poster that's on the VHS box, when the priest gets out of the cab and there's the light that shines down and the fog and the mist.
Yeah.
There's really nothing like that in this film.
No, I had even talked about The Changeling, how the film with George C. Scott just builds tension over time.
Yes.
And so it becomes, it goes from, did that door just close, to, did you hear a piano, to, so you kind of get these moments where you're not too sure what's going on and what's happening with it. Weird bangings that happen. For this,
and flashbacks and memories, and he has his own trauma, which they again try to establish in this film, but not really. I think that's the other thing too. Like that orgy scene is so insane and so over the top, and in some ways out of place.
Yes,
there are elements of the grotesque in this film.
Yes,
but then it goes back to too much to normal life. I think. There are grotesque characters. Maybe Burgess Meredith is the one. The weirdest casting of the film is Burgess Meredith, but he also almost steals the show.
He's wonderful. I enjoy him in this. And for Gen Xers, he was the Penguin in the Batman series. He also was famous for the Twilight episode where the world ends and he finally has time to read and steps on his glasses. And Rocky. He's the coach in Rocky.
Yes.
So I grew up with him as the Penguin, and so the thought of him being, menacing because he's just hysterical as the Penguin is not possible. He does such a good job in this particular role. But she meets him. He's supposedly one of her neighbors. He has a cat and a bird. He's just like quirky and funny.
Yes.
And she meets him. Then she meets her neighbors downstairs, who are a lesbian couple, and they're artists. And the one, Beverly D'Angelo, early in her career, masturbates in front of her. She gets weirded out and she runs out. But from those two encounters, you have no idea that this is possibly the gateway to hell.
Yes.
And then he has a silly party for his cat's birthday, and the same thing. It's just like quirky older people. You have no sense of pending doom. You just think it's like a bunch of quirky old people live in this particular building,
or the quirky old guy has quirky old guy friends.
Right. That was supposed to establish that there's danger in the building, and there's no way that establishes that there's danger. No, there's danger in the building.
Yes. You find out later.
Yes.
That all of these people are ghosts.
And murderers.
And murderers, ghosts of murderers, which is super scary.
Yeah.
But again, you don't find that out till a half hour later in this film. Not that time is the most important thing.
And Burgess Meredith,
but efficiency and good storytelling is
Satan or Lucifer or something like that. He's the head guy for it. And that, so the premise is and they tell you. So they actually don't do anything up until the very end of the film. But they want her to commit suicide so she doesn't become the new Sentinel, so the gates of hell can be opened.
Because the old Sentinel's kind of old, is very old,
yeah,
is gonna die soon, and needs they need a replacement Sentinel, and the church knows who the replacement Sentinel is.
Right.
I mean, which is this like sort of Old Testament sort of Book of Job sort of thing. Like God picks somebody who's like, yeah, that person's gonna suffer, but somebody's got to take one for the team here. So that there's that sort of that theological idea is in play in this film.
But so no one is panicked about it. She does take on the role of being the new Sentinel. But that last few minutes where kind of these beings are chasing her through the house, and she gets pushed to the attic where the old priest is and has been protecting the gate of hell, and they're trying to get her to commit suicide. Michael has been murdered at this point in time for trying to murder the old priest. A bishop kills him because he's trying to murder the old priest. And so there's this dramatic scene where the blind old priest walks through with the cross, and she grabs it and becomes the new Sentinel, and they're all forced back to hell. That last few moments, I think, is well done.
It looks like a horror movie.
It
feels like a horror movie.
But in terms of your pacing, you're right. So if the ultimate goal is to get her to commit suicide, you would think that the second that she moves in, they would be doing stuff to mess with her.
Yes.
Right. There's a point where it sounds like someone's walking in the apartment above her. And you see the chandelier swaying, but that wouldn't necessarily cause you to commit suicide, right? So you don't have any sense of them.
And there's a hint towards her she has mental illness problems, and
But there's not Burgess Meredith randomly popping up into her life and being like, I know Michael killed his wife, and just doing things to mess with her mental state.
Yes, that's a lost opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to go to the questions?
Yeah, let's go to the big 5 questions. Because, that's what this movie is. The big 5. Question 1, is it camp, retro, classic, or just an old movie?
What do you think?
I think it's just an old movie.
Okay.
So what do you really like about this movie? I guess that's the question I have. Having seen it now 3 times together.
Yeah, no, I saw it probably in the 80s initially. So I liked the concept that it was a female lead, that she is a woman trying to make it on her own. And I think this is young budding feminist me of her that not wanting to be reliant on Michael, who's a lawyer, to support her. Actually, there's a scene after her father dies where she asks her mom why she stayed, and she said she had no place to go. And I think that really just like resonated with me because of just my life circumstances and growing up, that there's just series of women in my life who were in bad marriages who stayed because they had nowhere to go. So I think that concept of her trying to find her path, but ends up in many ways being punished for trying to find her path because she ends up having to become a sentinel with that. But that was interesting to me, and I think I'm so love Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and The Omen, that though it was like low rent versions of those, I still kind of found something about it's like Piranha. There was just something fun about Piranha or Orca.
Yeah.
So there's definitely problems, and then watching it this time again, I was like, oh yeah, this isn't as fun as I remembered it being the first time I saw it. And I didn't remember how quickly she just like only had kind of 2 encounters with her neighbors, and they weren't necessarily creepy encounters that would make you think there's something wrong with the people or the building in it.
Yes.
Beyond it being
there's something metaphysically wrong.
It other than it being eccentric neighbors with it. But that's what I liked about it. I liked her character. I liked kind of like her arc and her trying to resolve past trauma, trying to find herself and trying to move forward with her life. I'm a big horror fan, and so yeah, the horror it's not a lot of horror in it. That's why, and I think that's what connected with me. And I'm a kind of a person sometimes when you make that connection, it kind of
it stays. I mean, and I think about that. Films that I liked when I was. I mean, we just did Ghostbusters last week,
right? And I think,
and for me watching it now, I was like.
And there's times when that connection is still right. Like the Changeling I really still enjoy the Changeling. Which we've never
done on this podcast.
Oh, we have to do the Changeling. I still really enjoy the Changeling. I still really enjoy Rosemary's Baby. I still really enjoy The Exorcist. So there's those times when that connection makes sense and it still makes sense. But I think this is just one that it's probably a film I've now outgrown.
Yes.
With it.
Speaking of which, question 2, since we are watching this 1977 film in the 2020s, what about the social political distance in the film?
Well, so the most obvious one is that the kind of minions of hell are actually real people with disabilities that they hired. And so that you could, you could take it 2 ways of like, oh, he gave these people an opportunity to work and have exposure, but it does feel like you're exploiting people. Yeah,
there is that. I also think about the lesbian neighbors.
Yes.
It's very of its time, and that time, being like what creates a film like Cruising, where homosexual characters are inherently threatening.
Yes.
That they are inherently deviant, inherently unable to control themselves.
Yeah.
And I that sat with me kind of weird watching it again today.
No, I don't think they're going to hell for murdering. I think they murdered.
But their portrayal
in I agree with you.
Encounter scene is...
It could have been even worse, though, if they said they're going to hell for being lesbians.
Yes, that is true.
But
that is true.
That portrayal of a lesbian couple is very, very of its time, and obviously written by someone who's never encountered a person who is gay.
Yes.
Anyway, I shouldn't say never, but maybe had limited exposure to people who are gay.
Or were leaning on
tropes of the time.
Very popular, very negative tropes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's a very Catholic film in the sense that, like, the Catholic Church is all knowing and powerful, and it's the Catholic Church that is helping to keep this evil at bay. that also feels like very dated, that the Catholic Church is like all powerful.
Yeah, you would have the Warrens instead.
Yes, that's true.
You know, which is sort of this like, we don't want the big bureaucracy or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you think it even much like The Exorcist actually borrows the first scene is somewhere far away.
Yes, in like
in Italy, yes, and there's somehow the old world is this place of
and they know
profound deception and profound liminality and in touch of evil, where evil can be on Earth, and then the shocking thing is when that comes to New York City.
Well, also, though it's oceans away, they know there's a disturbance in the forest, for the lack of a better term. They know that something evil is happening. So if that's the gateway to the hell, is that also then where the Garden of Eden would be? Because he makes that reference.
Yeah.
Sorry, so New York was the... Anyway, sorry.
So question 3, what about the technical distance of this film?
Yeah.
I think the practical makeup effects are still really good looking.
Well, the funny part is she can't even get a phone in her apartment. Which at a time you actually had to, there was... because it was... Well, actually, it would have been Bell at the time, right? So
yeah, it would have been the Ma Bell monopoly, yeah.
And so, you didn't have options. You couldn't say, oh, well, Comcast, you can't get here, I'm going to get Verizon. And how many people actually have landlines anyway?
Yeah.
But to get a landline, you had to, schedule an appointment, and it could be weeks or months. So she actually had to use a payphone to call Michael when she had problems.
Yes.
That, I just had to laugh, because it's that is just so not what we experience now.
Yes. Which I guess now that we actually, not to loop back a question, but there's something you said about her living alone would have been maybe slightly revolutionary at that time.
It would have. That's true.
And that was really shocking and potentially sinful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that she actually made enough money modeling
to be able to do that. Yeah. So what was it like to watch this movie on VHS?
Well, we mentioned it, it was very...
it was a Good Times home video, VHS. Very light tape.
Yeah.
Not much tape.
So it kept getting wavy. It parts fuzzed out a little bit.
Which, I will say, though, it doesn't, other than the waving fuzzing out, it doesn't look that much different from the DVD.
No, that's true. It's probably had a bad print that they made it from.
Yes. That they made both from. So finally, question 5. Will we ever watch it again?
I probably will, because I do have a certain affinity for this movie. And I think they're... a lot of times in 70s and 80s films, even some 90s films, women who are not the norm, who don't follow the norm, who don't get married and have children and be a stay-at-home wife, are punished in some way. So if you look at The Exorcist, her mom is divorced, right? And it's is it because they're there is a whole research around that kind of the divorced mom, the entity, the same thing, right? So you have women being punished a lot in these films. In a way, I joke that she was punished, but she agrees to accept a nobler cause, right? So it's not necessarily she's punished, but she accepts a nobler cause, which felt different.
Yes.
From a lot of what was happening at that particular time, of this kind of punishing a woman for not following the path that was preordained. There is a part of it that I still am but I kind of like that message. There's a part that I'll still want to watch it. Whether I force you to watch it with me or not is the question.
I appreciate that. I might forget.
I know, 5 years, and let's watch the Sentinel. You'll be like, how did I feel about that? I'll be you liked it.
Yeah, and I was oh my god, it's Jeff Goldblum. And then just have that as experience. Oh, it's Christopher Walken. 2 lines, but he still looks weird.
And sounds like Christopher Walken.
And still sounds like Christopher Walken in 1977. Yeah, that's what I got.
That's what I got. I think, though, in terms of, if you're a fan of horror films, though it's horror light, I do think it's a film worth visiting. I think it's a film worth checking out.
As a genre study, again, if you see The Exorcist, see Rosemary's Baby, see The Exorcist first, check out The Omen, and when you've devoured that and you want to be a completist of that genre, maybe The Sentinel has a place.
And oddly, I'd actually rather watch this than Nightmare on Elm Street. And I can't tell you why. Like, I just thought...
Because Nightmare on Elm Street is cheesy and overrated.
It is, and it's just so overplayed. And I think it's just because there's so many of those films out there. There's one Sentinel. I do think there is a value in checking it out. I'm a person who does like to see as many different types of horror films as possible, and just to kind of have a sense of the scope of horror from different decades. If you're that kind of person, check it out. But if you're a person who is like, I just like slasher films, it's definitely not the film.
Yeah, if you're a slasher fan, if you're a Giallo fan,
not the film.
If you're a body horror fan, if you're a horror comedy fan, if you're that new sort of wave of domestic horror fan, it might seem like this will be a film for you. It's not.
No.
It ain't for any of those fans.
No. But if you're a completist type of person, and I watch horror films from all sorts of genres. I'm not a necessarily genre-specific person. Though domestic horror tends to be like the one I gravitate towards the most, I guess.
That's what's hot right now.
That's what's hot right now. But I think I'm a person who has watched every type of genre and has things I like in all different genres. I think if you're kind of a scholar of horror and just like kind of enjoy learning about the history of horror, check it out.
Yep, that sounds fair.
Perfect. Awesome. Bye.